You know, kid. They only call you dangerous when they can't control you. That's the truth. That's the whole game. They'll dress it up with fancy words. Unpredictable, unstable, too intense. But really? You just didn't fold. You didn't kneel when they expected you to. You didn't bark for crumbs like they wanted. And that terrifies them. Especially the ones who thought they had you figured out. Ever notice how they loved you most when you were broken? When you were lost, confused, begging for anyone to see you. That's when they smiled. That's when they felt safe. But when you stopped bleeding for them, when your silence became louder than your pain, they panicked. Because silence means you're thinking. It means you're not begging anymore. It means you're watching. And that makes you dangerous. You were never meant to be easy to understand. You were meant to break the mold. Tear up the script. Flip the whole damn table if you had to. They were writing a tragedy for you. But you handed it back soaked in gasoline. That's why they call you dangerous. Not because you're wrong. Not because you're evil. But because you don't fit in their little box. You outgrew it. You lit it on fire and walked away. Without ever looking back. And because they can't define you, they demonize you. That's what society does when it can't control someone. It calls them a threat. It shouts them down, mocks their pain, and buries their truth. They'll whisper you're too much. Too cold. Too selfish. But really? You just stopped breaking your back for people who wouldn't even crawl for you. Have you ever seen how wolves act around the fire? They don't try to fight it. They fear it. And you, my friend, are fire. Wild. Uncontainable. Burning. So they circled you. Called you toxic when you set boundaries. Labeled you selfish when you stopped being their emotional dumping ground. Accused you of changing when really, you were healing. And here's the truth. You did change. You grew fangs where you once had open hands. You grew silent where you once had soft explanations. You stopped telling people your worth. You made them feel it. That's power. And now, they flinch when you walk into the same rooms you used to cry in. They never expected you to survive the storm they left you in. They counted on you drowning. You weren't supposed to rise. But you did. And not just survive, you rebuilt. In silence. You turned your pain into fuel. Every betrayal, every you'll never make it - you burned it all. And now, you're burning. You became what they feared, untouchable. Not loud or arrogant. But quietly unstoppable. Like a ghost walking through the life that tried to bury you. Still here. Still standing. Still dangerous. Because they can't predict you. And they hate that. Here's the saddest part. They could have walked with you. They could have built with you. But they wanted to control more than connection. Power is more than peace. So they chose to misunderstand you. They chose to paint you as the villain. And that's on them. One day, they'll scroll through old messages, old photos, old memories. And realize. You were the one. The calm. The storm. The entire story. But by then, you'll be long gone. Unreachable. Untouchable. And still dangerous. Not because you hurt anyone. but because you don't need anyone anymore. They never wanted your truth. They wanted your silence dressed as obedience. You tried to warn them, didn't you? In love. In patience. In forgiveness. But they kept stepping on it like it meant nothing. You stayed through things that would have broken most people. You gave until you bled. And they still wanted more. So when you finally pulled back, when you stopped showing up, stopped calling, stopped explaining, they acted surprised. As if they didn't build that silence brick by brick. That's how it always goes. They act blind. Until you disappear. Then suddenly, they see everything. But it's too late. Because now you can breathe. You've got air in your lungs. Clarity in your mind. And peace in your soul. And once you've tasted freedom. Once you've felt what it's like to no longer betray yourself. You never go back. That's why they call you dangerous now. Because you don't play dead just to keep the peace. You choose peace. The kind that doesn't cost your soul. So don't apologize. You earn this version of yourself. With every sleepless night. Every unanswered message. Every fake smile. You're not rude. You're not mean. You're healed. And healed people? They don't play nice with their abusers. They don't hand out second chances to manipulators. They walk alone. And they walk proud. Sure, it gets lonely. Sure, there are nights when the memories whisper like ghosts. But you're not broken anymore. You're rebuilding. Quietly. Brutally. Completely. And one day, those same people who said you were too much will watch you from a distance and whisper, "That was the one who got away." They'll say your silence came out of nowhere. That you just vanished. But that's the lie they tell themselves. Because the truth is uglier. You gave them every warning. In every language they understood. Love. Time. Patience. And they ignored it. So when you stopped talking, stopped caring, stopped breaking for them, it wasn't sudden. It was the end of a war you never asked to fight. And now, you're free. Now, you're fire. Now, you're dangerous. They only remember your value when you stop giving. They only realize your presence when it becomes an absence. But by then, it's too late. You're not angry. You're not broken. You're just done. And that is the scariest version of anyone. Not the one who yells. Not the one who cries. But the one who goes quiet. And never looks back. You see, people think dangerous means loud, angry, or violent. But real danger? It's someone who's mastered detachment. Someone who loved deeply. And still chose to walk away. Someone who saw the red flags, and instead of repainting them, just let them burn. That's you now. Not bitter. Not cold. Just focused. And no amount of guilt can change that. Because life teaches you the hard way. You learn that kindness without boundaries turns you into a target. That silence isn't peace when it's hiding your pain. That loyalty is a noose when you give it to the wrong people. You used to think that if you just loved enough, gave enough, waited long enough, they'd see you. They'd finally choose you. But some people love the chaos more than they love the ones who stand with them through it. Some want attention, not depth. Control, not connection. And you finally saw it. You stopped waiting for apologies that would never come. Stopped hoping for growth in people who chose to stay small. You stopped expecting loyalty from people who treated relationships like games. That's the shift. That's the moment you became dangerous. Because when you stop reacting, you start ruling. When you stop needing it, you start building, even if it's alone. In silence. In shadows. In your own damn lane. And they feel it. Every quiet step you take without them echoes louder than all the screaming ever did. They feel your absence like a wound they can't explain. They scroll through your life now, watching you grow. Telling themselves you were always like this. But deep down, they know. They know they had access to the rarest, most real version of you. And they wasted it. You weren't too much. They were too little. You weren't hard to love. They just couldn't handle your depth without drowning in their own shallowness. Now they try to rewrite the story. Make themselves the victim in a tale where you were left bleeding. They say you changed. Say you became cold, distant, unreachable. But they'll never admit the nights you sat alone, holding yourself together in pieces so small you could barely breathe. They'll never speak of the days you were silently screaming, praying someone would notice you were falling apart. They won't talk about how they ignored you, drained you, kept you as a backup plan while chasing chaos. No accountability is too heavy for people who can't carry their own guilt. So instead, they point fingers. Call you toxic for building walls. But forget they were the reason those walls were built. You didn't go cold without reason. You froze to survive the fire they kept dragging you into. You became distant because every time you got close, you got cut. But here's what they'll never understand. You're not angry anymore. You're awake. You're not bitter. You're aware. And that version of you, the quiet one, the one who smiles, walks alone, and doesn't react, that version scares them. Because they can't reach you now. You've outgrown the need for closure. You've stopped needing their validation to breathe. You buried the past. Not with flowers, but with fire. That's why they call you dangerous. Not because you're a threat, but because they can no longer control your story. You took the pen back. You wrote your own ending. In this version, you don't beg. You don't chase. You don't break. You rise. Pain was your teacher. And it taught you well. It taught you not to fall in love with potential, but to demand proof. That peace matters more than attention. That silence is stronger than screaming. That self-respect is non-negotiable. You gave people the benefit of the doubt, even after they stabbed you with it. But now you see the truth. People either value you or they don't. And if they don't, they lose you. Simple. No more shrinking. No more bleeding for people who wouldn't give a drop for you. That lesson hurt. But it built something new. Something strong. Something real. You learned to protect your soul. Even if it meant walking alone. Even if it meant letting go of the ones you prayed would stay. That's power. That's what makes you untouchable now. Sure, some part of you still wonders. Did they ever care? Maybe they did. Maybe that's exactly why they ran. Because nothing terrifies the shallow more than someone who loves deeply. You were a mirror to their emptiness. You were the storm they couldn't handle. Not because you were chaotic, but because you were real. In a world that worships the fake. And realness exposes people. It forces them to see how small they've been living. So instead of growing with you, they let you go. Now they say you've changed. Damn right, you changed. You evolved. You upgraded. You stopped setting yourself on fire to keep others warm. You see, the cruelest part wasn't that they left. It's that they left after you gave them everything. After you stayed when no one else did. After you forgave what you should never have forgiven. After you protected their ego by hiding your pain. And made excuses for their silence, their distance, their sins. And they treated your love like it was disposable. Spent it like loose change. And when it runs out, they walked off like they hadn't just wrecked the most sacred thing you had to offer. You gave them everything. And they gave you excuses. Manipulation with a smile. And still, you showed up. Still hoped. Still loved. Until you couldn't anymore. And when you finally went quiet, they acted like you were the problem. But that's always how it goes. The one who walks away will always be painted as the villain. Because your peace exposes their chaos. Your growth reminds them of the smallness they chose to live in. Your healing becomes a threat. So they mock it. Twist it. Call it ego. Call it heartlessness. But what's truly heartless? It is using someone's loyalty. Wasting their time. Faking love. Walking away. That's not heartless. That's survival. So let them talk. Let them whisper. Let them spin stories. You don't owe them the truth anymore. You owe it to yourself. You owe yourself silence when words are wasted. Peace when drama knocks. Discipline. The kind that makes you walk away. Even when your heart wants to stay. Because real growth isn't loud. It's not for show. It's not for likes. It's not for anyone else. It's for you. And that makes you dangerous. This is what happens when you bury every version of yourself that kept getting hurt and claw your way into someone new. When you stop begging for love and start becoming it. When you stop pleading to be chosen and start choosing yourself. That's what danger looks like now. Not rage. Not revenge. Peace. A kind of peace built on truth. On boundaries. A peace that doesn't flinch when the past comes knocking. Sure, you still feel it sometimes. The ache. The flashbacks. That quiet grief for what could have been. It never fully leaves. But now you carry it differently. It doesn't own you, it fuels you. It doesn't control your days, it sharpens them. You've learned to wear your scars like armor, not shame. You don't drown in pain anymore. You use it. And that's what they never saw coming. You didn't just survive. You rose. You became colder. Calmer. Wiser. You stopped explaining your worth. Stopped chasing validation. Stopped entertaining anything that didn't feed your soul. You're not the broken version of yourself anymore. You're the rebuilt one. The reborn one. The one who doesn't just walk away, but keeps walking until even the memory of the hurt fades behind your silence. And that silence, that's what's terrifying. Because when you've walked through hell and didn't come out bitter, when your heart stayed soft, but your soul got sharp like a blade, you become something this world isn't ready for. You're not loud, not desperate, not out for revenge. You're focused. And no one can predict focus. No one can manipulate someone who's no longer moved by chaos. You don't entertain drama. You don't take the bait. You don't try to fix broken people who've made a lifestyle out of breaking others. That version of you died in the fire they set. The one who apologized for existing. The one who stayed quiet to avoid offense. The ones who let themselves be treated like an option. Gone. Buried. Burned. In their place stands someone colder, wiser, more dangerous. Because now you see everything. You watch. You listen. You know who they are. And still, you smile. And walk right past them like they never had a grip on you. You stopped arguing. That was the first sign. Someone tried to trigger you. And instead of snapping, you just went quiet. That calm, deadly silence. That's not indifference. That's evolution. You don't fight pointless battles anymore. You don't wrestle with snakes. You let them bite the air. Let them spin in circles. While you stay 10 steps ahead. You've learned. Their chaos is their prison. Their noise is their leash. You broke free. You used to be reactive. Used to bleed in every direction, hoping someone would notice your pain. But now, your silence is a wall. Your detachment is a boundary. And your presence when given is a gift. Not a guarantee. They hate that now. Because they no longer know where they stand with you. And they used to live off the fact that you'd never walk away. They underestimated you. That was their mistake. They mistook your love for weakness. Your loyalty for compliance. Your forgiveness for permission. And for a while, yeah, they were right. You stayed. You hoped. You waited. But pain. Pain is a brutal teacher. It shows you who people really are when they think you'll never leave. And when you finally do. When you choose silence over arguments, peace over chaos. Self-respect over recycled heartbreak. They panic. That's when they show their true face. The desperate one. The pleading one. The you've changed one. And that's when you know. They never loved you. They loved the control they had when you did. But now, they're just background noise. Faded characters in a story you've outgrown. And you're writing a new one. One where you're the main character. Where your peace is the plot. Where your healing is the climax. No more begging. No more performing. No more giving pieces of yourself to people who never knew how to hold them. You're not whole yet. But you're becoming. Piece by piece. Day by day. In silence. With discipline. By choosing yourself every damn morning. And that's power. That's what they never saw coming. That you'd stop crying. Stop chasing. Stop hoping. And start building. Alone. Quietly. Without permission. And the best part? You're just getting started. They'll never say it out loud. but your absence echoes louder than your presence ever did. People don't realize the weight you carried until you stop carrying theirs. They don't value your light until they're stumbling in the dark you used to protect them from. That's what you were. Light. A damn lantern in a tunnel they never even tried to leave. You kept shining. Kept hoping they'd find their way. And all they did was complain about the glow. Too much. Too intense. Too real. Still, you stayed. Still, you gave. Until you realize. They didn't want to find their way. They were just comfortable in the shadows. Comfortable being loved without changing. Comfortable watching you dim yourself to make them feel okay. So you turned the light off. Not out of spite. Not to punish. But because you finally understood. Your glow is not for everyone. And that was the shift. The moment you stopped trying to be understood by people who were committed to misunderstanding you. You stopped explaining your worth. Stopped auditioning for roles where the script had already planned to kill you off. You stopped chasing closure. Stopped reopening wounds just to prove they hurt. Stop setting yourself on fire just to prove you have a heart. And that silence. That stillness. That's what terrifies them now. Because people expect noise when they hurt you. Tears. Drama. A scene. But when you do nothing. When you just disappear. That's when the real panic sets in. They can't read what they can't control. And now. You're unreadable. Unreachable. Unpredictable. And nothing scares a manipulator more than a soul they can no longer influence. You didn't post about your healing. Didn't announce it. You just moved differently. Loved yourself more. Answered less. Spoke softer. Slept better. And now those who mistook your pain for weakness. They don't know where they stand. They thought they broke you. But you didn't fall apart. You reconstructed. Not into the same shape. Into something sharper. Colder. Cleaner. Not out of revenge. Out of necessity. Because healing isn't about turning the other cheek. It's about making sure no one gets close enough to slap you again. You walk differently now. You don't carry what you used to. Your silence isn't empty. It's sacred. It's the voice of every scream you held in. Every explanation you never gave. Every time you wanted to be chosen and weren't. And yet here you are. Still standing. Still breathing. Not as soft maybe. But stronger. Not as naive. Not as naive. But clearer. And in that brutal, lonely clarity. You found something they never expected you to. You found yourself. That was always the real victory. Not winning them over. But reclaiming your soul. Learning how to sit in your own presence. And not crave anyone else's. You weren't born dangerous. You were made that way. Brick by betrayal. Fire by disappointment. Cut by loss. And still. You're here. Not perfect. But whole enough to know. Whoever enters your life next. Will be there because they earned it. Will be there because they earned it. Not because you needed saving. Not because you were desperate. But because they respected the peace you bled for. And if they don't, they'll leave the way you once did. Quietly. Without noise. Without regret. Because now you know. Silence. Silence isn't a weakness. It's power. And it's yours now. This is what happens when you bury every broken version of yourself and claw your way into something new. When you stop begging to be loved and start becoming love. When you stop pleading to be chosen and finally choose yourself. That's what danger looks like now. Not rage. Not revenge. But peace. A peace built on truth. A peace protected by boundaries. A peace that doesn't flinch when the past comes knocking. And sure, you still feel it sometimes. The ache. The flashbacks. The quiet mourning of what could have been. That doesn't fully disappear. But now, you carry it differently. Now, it doesn't own you, it fuels you. It doesn't control your days, it sharpens them. You've learned to wear your scars like armor, not shame. To use the pain instead of drowning in it. And that's what they never saw coming. You didn't just survive. You rose. You became something colder, calmer, wiser. You became someone who no longer explains their worth. Who doesn't chase approval. Who won't settle for anything that doesn't feed your soul. You're not the broken version of yourself anymore. You're rebuilt. You're reborn. And you're walking not just away but forward. So far forward that even the memory of what hurt you gets lost behind your silence. That's not just powerful. That's terrifying. And it should be. Because when you've been through hell, and you come out without becoming a monster, without hardening your heart, but instead of sharpening your soul like a blade, you become something the world doesn't know how to handle. You're not loud. Not desperate. Not vengeful. You're focused. And people don't know what to do with someone they can't control. You're not entertaining chaos anymore. You're not biting the bait. You're not trying to fix people who make a habit of breaking others. That version of you. The one who apologized for existing? Who softened her voice to avoid offense? Who let herself be treated like an option? She's gone. Burned. Buried. And in her place stands someone colder. Wiser. Infinitely more dangerous. Because now you see everything. You watch. You listen. And you smile anyway. Then walk past them like they never had power over you. You don't argue anymore. That's the first sign. Someone triggers you and instead of snapping back, you just go silent. That silence. That calm, still silence. That's not indifference. That's evolution. You don't fight empty wars anymore. You don't wrestle snakes. You let them bite the air while you stay 10 steps ahead. Their chaos used to be your prison. Now, it's their leash. And you've broken free. You used to bleed in every direction hoping someone would care. Now, your silence is a wall. Your detachment is a boundary. And your presence when given is a gift. Not a guarantee. They can't stand it now. Because they don't know where they stand with you anymore. And they used to live for that certainty. They underestimated you. They thought your softness was a weakness. That your loyalty meant you'd stay. That your forgiveness meant you'd always come back. And for a while, they were right. You did stay. You did hope. You did wait. But pain. Pain is a hell of a teacher. It shows you who people are when they think you'll never leave. And when you finally do. When you choose silence over begging, peace over chaos, self-respect over recycled heartbreak. They panic. They start to show you the version they always hid. The desperate one. The pleading one. The you've changed one. And that's when you know. That's when the mask shatters. They never loved you. They loved the control they had when you loved them. But now, they're just background noise. Faded characters in a story you've outgrown. Because now you're rewriting a new story. And in this one, you're the main character. Your peace is the plot. Your healing is the climax. No more begging. No more performing. No more giving yourself away to people who never knew how to hold you. You're whole now. Or maybe not whole but becoming. Piece by piece. Day by day. Through silence. Through discipline. By choosing yourself every damn morning. And that's the power they never saw coming. You stopped crying. Stopped chasing. Stopped hoping. And started building alone. Quietly. Without asking for permission. And the best part? You're just getting started. They'll never admit it. But your absence echoes louder than your presence ever did. Because people never realize the weight you carry until you stop carrying theirs. They don't see your light until they're left in the dark you used to protect them from. You were the light. A damn lantern in a tunnel they weren't even trying to escape. You kept shining, hoping they'd find their way. And all they did was complain about how bright you were. So you turned it off. Not out of spite. But because you finally understood. Your glow is not for everyone. And that's the shift. When you stop trying to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. When you stop explaining your worth. When you stop auditioning for roles in someone else's story. Especially when the script was written to kill your character off. You stop chasing closure. Stop setting yourself on fire just to prove you have a heart. And that silence is what drives them crazy now. Because they expected drama. Tears. A scene. But when you did nothing. When you just vanished. That's when the real panic set in. Because you became unreadable. Unreachable. Unpredictable. And nothing scares a control freak more than a soul they can no longer manipulate. You didn't heal for attention. You didn't post about it. You didn't make announcements. You just moved differently. Loved yourself more. Answered less. Slept better. Spoke softer. And now those who once thought your silence was weakness. They have no idea where they stand. They thought they broke you. But you didn't break. You rebuilt. Not into the same shape. But into something colder. Cleaner. Sharper. Not out of spite but necessity. Because healing isn't about turning the other cheek anymore. It's about learning not to let anyone close enough to slap it again. You walk differently now. You carry less weight. And your silence. It's not empty. It's sacred. It's the sound of survival. The sound of wisdom. The sound of self-respect. You weren't too much. You were too real. You weren't too intense. You were too honest. You weren't hard to love. They were just too small to hold a love that came without conditions. And now, you're standing on ground you built from nothing. Not waiting. Not explaining. Not justifying why you left. Just living. Quietly. Strongly. With a calm that shakes the ones who once called you weak. They'll feel it. Not because you're watching. But because they are. They always were. And in the back of their minds, they'll remember your love. Your loyalty. Your light. And they'll know. They called you dangerous because deep down, they knew one day you'd realize your worth. Without them,